Russian economy is literally melting in front of our eyes, and Putin is personally afraid. That's why he has left Kremlin altogether to go beg for help from former Soviet states. All the while, Russian officials back at home have no clue what's going on. We can see this from the nonsensical media interviews that they are putting out while Putin is away. But you see, this wasn't even the worst part. The worst part for Russia was how Putin was treated at this meeting among former Soviet states. Now, you know he had to beg for help, but before he could do that, he had to personally apologize to Azerbaijan in front of the whole world. Russia is slowly realizing that it may not survive in one piece, and it all starts with the failure of the Russian military. Listen to it yourself.
I've said it before, but I'll share this with you as well. I literally, if you had a snail start from the border of Russia and Ukraine and continue for the last 3.5 years, it would now be in Poland. And they are not even 20% into the country. So I think that demonstrates just sort of how inept, how ineffective, incompetent the Russian military has proven on the battlefield.
When every country in the world can see that you're not the second strongest military as you claimed for decades, they stop reacting to your bullying and they in fact start pushing back. That's exactly what Azerbaijan has been doing for the last few years. You see, last Christmas, December 25, 2024, Russia shot down an Azerbaijani civilian plane. But then Russia refused to apologize for this mistake or take any type of accountability. In fact, Putin said that the plane crashed because of pilot error. Well, Azerbaijanis did not buy this excuse, and they were not afraid of the Russian army. In fact, they realized that Russia needs Azerbaijan more than Azerbaijan needs Russia. And this is exactly why Putin is now being forced to apologize in front of everyone and admit his mistake before he can beg for help for the Russian economy. Listen to this yourself.
I would like to begin our meeting with the most sensitive topic, the aviation tragedy that occurred in our skies. And even then, we were told on our first phone call not only to apologize for this tragic event, but also from Russia occurred in Russian airspace, but also expressed my most sincere condolences to the families of the victims. I would like to repeat that once again, to reaffirm it, and to say that we are, of course, as agreed, we can speak about the causes of this tragedy, this catastrophe. It is connected with several circumstances. The first is that there was a Ukrainian drone in the sky. We were tracking 3 such drones that crossed the Russian border at night on the day of the tragedy.
Guys, I'm having a hard time keeping track of all the things that Putin has blamed on Ukraine. Russian economy crashing, well, that's Ukraine's fault. Russian military is incompetent, of course, that's Ukraine's fault. And now Russia shoots down a passenger plane, and somehow it's still Ukraine's fault. I feel like if Putin stubs his toe on the table, he'll blame Ukraine for that too. He just sees Ukraine everywhere, and that's because Ukraine has become quite a bit of a nightmare for him. Now, as if this wasn't embarrassing enough for the leader of the second strongest military in the world, let me show you this next clip. Because in this clip, Putin accidentally gives it away why the Russian military is failing so bad. It's not Russian commanders' fault. It's Russia's commander-in-chief's fault, and that's Putin. Listen to it yourself.
The second reason lies in technical malfunctions within Russia's own air defense system. The 2 missiles that were launched did not directly hit the aircraft. If they had, it would have crashed immediately. But had exploded, perhaps it was a self-destruction, mainly not by the warheads, but most likely from fragments of the missiles themselves. That is precisely why the pilot perceived it as a collision with a flock of birds. He was also advised, and this too is clearly audible on the black boxes.
This is exactly why Russian army is suffering. Putin has no clue how anything works. That's because he says that the air defense was supposed to hit the plane, but that's not how Russian air defenses work. And it's kinda sad that I know this and Putin doesn't. You see, Russia uses Pantsir S-1 and S-2, maybe Tor missile system, and they definitely use S-300 and S-400s. All of these use proximity fuse missiles, meaning the missiles get near the target and explode, pushing out the shrapnel that takes down the target. Here's an example of a clip that shows how this is supposed to work. This is exactly what happened when Russia accidentally took down that Azeri plane. But Putin was saying that it was supposed to be a direct hit, but Russian air defenses malfunctioned. Now he got one part right. Russian air defenses malfunction all the time, but I don't think they did this time. Only time direct hit is used is when they're using a modern air defense system, and they only use that to stop a ballistic missile, because you kind of have to hit the missile if you want to take out the ballistic missile. But you see, this shows us what the problem with the whole Russian system is, and this is a problem we see in every single dictatorships. Dictators don't want to give up control of the military because they know it could be used against them in a coup, kinda like what Prigozhin did almost 2 years ago. But then again, they don't have the expertise to lead a military properly, so they're worse than useless when they're controlling the military. They don't help, but in fact, they end up hurting the capabilities of the military. And this all leads to disaster as we are seeing it in Ukraine. This has happened with Saddam, this has happened with Gaddafi, and we're seeing it happen with Putin in front of our eyes. On top of this, another thing dictators do is they put incompetent people around them so they don't have to worry about someone trying to overthrow them. Well, this leads to kinda disastrous interviews when the dear leader is not home. This is also what's happening back at Kremlin. Putin is away from the country, and dumb Russian officials are putting out completely incoherent messages from Russia. Let's listen to this first one, where we have the foreign minister saying that the Alaska meeting between Putin and President Trump was completely useless.
Sadly, we need to state that the powerful impulse of Anchorage in favor of agreements has been largely exhausted by the efforts of enemies and the efforts of those in favor of war, till the last Ukrainian, first of all, Europeans.
Now, as I said, this guy is the deputy foreign minister. But in this next clip, we have the Russian advisor to foreign policy. Apparently, this position deals directly with Putin, and that person is putting out a completely different message than what the foreign minister is saying.
Of course, the understandings and agreements reached in Anchorage are not to everyone's liking. During the meeting in Anchorage, the two presidents agreed on quite significant elements that could form the basis for a peaceful settlement in Ukraine. Of course, the understandings and agreements reached in Anchorage are not to everyone's liking. For example, the Europeans do not like them, nor does the Ukrainian regime. Those who do not wish to achieve a peaceful settlement of the Ukrainian crisis dislike them. They don't like these agreements and understandings. But that doesn't mean they don't work. They do work. And it is on the basis of these agreements and understandings that we are continuing and will continue contacts with our American partners. So any statements that the momentum of Anchorage is fading or has been exhausted are completely incorrect.
Now, you see, the reason Russians are putting out so many contradictory messages is because they're kind of mad at President Trump for giving tomahawks to Ukraine, but they also don't want to seem too aggressive in criticizing Trump because that could lead to disastrous results. Well, those disastrous results that Russia is so afraid of may be coming sooner than we might have thought. Because US representative to NATO just confirmed that US has many potentially powerful weapons that it can provide to Ukraine that can destroy Kremlin. Listen to it.
The United States, as the Admiral mentioned, I mean, we have capabilities that are currently not being deployed on the battlefield in Ukraine that are fearsome, that are powerful, and that can quite literally do serious damage at a place and time of our choosing. And that some of those are going to continue to be potentially moved to Ukraine for their use, and that could change the calculation. But obviously we haven't reached the point where Vladimir Putin has decided that the time is appropriate to negotiate, and I don't know. I mean, the problem that Vladimir Putin finds himself in is that he cannot demonstrate weakness.
And it wasn't just some representative to NATO that was saying these things. US President himself, President Trump, also dropped a similar message to Russia. I guess I should call it a warning.
Are you going to step up the pressure? Are you going to step up the pressure for a Ukraine deal?
Yeah, we are stepping up the pressure. We're stepping it up together. We're all stepping it up. NATO's been great. The leader of NATO, as you know, Mark, has been fantastic, I think, and he's a fantastic guy. And they are stepping it up. And we're selling a lot of weapons to NATO, and that's going, I guess, to Ukraine for the most part. That's up to them. But they're buying weapons from the U.S. We make the greatest weapons in the world. You buy our planes and a lot of our equipment. And you have a big force, actually. You have a tremendous force of equipment.